Do you know what are the effects of market prices? Discounts, rebates, freebies. Do house buyers really gain from them? Are you aware of the consequences? Do you know the open secret in marketing toyed by property developers? Now, in this episode, I would like to forewarn those unwary and naive house buyers to be careful of superficial discounts that mark the property market. The National House Buyers Association is glad to hear the report of two commercial banks saying that they are aware of discounting practices by developers and have taken the necessary mitigating measures to ensure that the financing is reflective of the value of the property purchased. The open secret in marketing ploy. Now, for many years, HB has spoken against the open secret that housing developers artificially inflate the property prices and then offer a discount or rebate to offset against the 10% down payment, thus indirectly giving their buyers up to 100% in financing.
You've been lied to.
Now, as far back as 2013, Bank Negara Malaysia has officially instructed all banks in Malaysia to offer a maximum of 90% end financing based on the net selling price of the property after deducting all discounts and rebates offered by housing developers. However, housing developers continue to openly advertise the existence of such rebates. It was only not so long ago that housing developers were complaining that house buyers are not given full financing, which means that most banks just close both eyes when it comes to rebate issues. You know what are the effects of market prices? Now, although the act of increasing property prices and then offering rebates up to say 10% appear to help the rakyat to buy their dream homes, but such acts do more harm than good in the long run. Using an example of a property that is only valued at 450,000 ringgit. If the housing developer wants to offer 10% rebate, the selling price will then be inflated to 500,000 ringgit, and the developer then offers a 10% rebate equal to about 50,000 ringgit. Hence, the house buyers would get a full loan of 450,000 ringgit. Now, some of the negative consequences of this rebate nonsense are: 1. Higher costs to the house buyers such as stamp duty for the transfer of property and loan agreement are based on a regulated percentage of the value of the property or loan. The higher the property price or loan, the higher the stamp duty. 2. The artificial increase of 50,000 will result in a higher stamp duty on the transfer of property of 1,000 ringgit and loan agreement of 250 ringgit. Thirdly, higher interest amount as the house buyers is taking a higher loan. In our current example, the total loan repayment for a loan of 450,000 versus a loan of 405,000. That is 450,000 multiplied by 90%. For a typical 30-year loan is higher by 82,000 ringgit. The increased prices of existing completed property and future launches will somehow be increased. Prices of completed properties, or also known as secondary property, are interlinked with prices of new launches, also known as primary properties. Whenever the prices of primary properties increases, the owner of secondary properties will also increase their selling price. This in turn will also increase prices of future launches, and the vicious cycle continues. This will ultimately result in property prices increasing out the reach of the average rakyat.
It's too expensive. I'm done.
Fifthly, it encourages speculation, as the house buyers only need to pay the ancillary costs to purchase a property and service some interest during construction. Upon completion, the house buyer will then try to flip the property for a quick gain. This method has encouraged a lot of flippers in the market, i.e. Investors Club, and those in for a quick gain.
Gentlemen, in exactly 5 days, we will be $100 billion richer.
Transacted prices is not the true price. Now, let me explain this one to you. The prices declared to the government, especially Jabatan Penilaian dan Perkhidmatan Harta, the JPPH, are the transacted prices stated in the sale and purchase agreement and not their true prices. Hence, when valuation are made, the false information exacerbate the price discovery and can lead to valuation that are ever spiraling. Now, this action makes the price discovery difficult. Sometimes we wonder how the developer reconcile in their books the sale and purchase price versus the true price, since they have declared to the bank that the S&P price are the true prices. Similarly, we wonder how will the auditor and the Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri look at them? Now, HBA acknowledges that one of the most challenging issues in buying a property is to come up with a 10% down payment. To this, HBA called for the first-time house buyers to be allowed 100% in financing to buy affordable property costing 300,000 ringgit and below. In fact, there are various schemes by the government to assist first-time house buyers, especially in the B40 and the M40 group, to get 100% in financing, subjected of course to fulfillment of terms and conditions. Now, buying a property is the biggest purchase that the average rakyat will make in their lifetime, and hence, it is important that aspiring house buyers must save enough money to pay the 10% down payment and be able to afford the monthly installments while maintaining an acceptable standard of living.
Okay.
Aspiring house buyers must also factor in potential changes in lifestyle, such as having additional children or aging parents before committing to the house purchase. HBA sincerely hope the commercial bank will really take the necessary measures to ensure that end financing amount is reflective of the true value of the property and adopt responsible lending process. HBA also called for Bank Negara Malaysia to ensure that all banks in Malaysia adhere to the Bank Negara guideline that end financing is based on the net of discounts and rebates, as some banks continue to close both eyes. When it comes to this rebate issue, I'll take you now to MCO sales bargains. Now, this COVID-19 pandemic is expected to take a heavy toll on the property sector, and property developers are expected to give massive rebates to entice house buyers, even to the extent that a certain developer was reported to have guaranteed 1 proton for every unit property purchase. Hence, more stringent action is required for this critical stage, or else the banking industry will be saddled with property loans that are not reflective of their true value. Now, for the average person, buying a property is the single biggest financial commitment in his or her lifetime. Hence, careful thought and planning is a must. I have previously spoken on episode 1 titled, So You Want to Buy a House? On the issue of what aspiring first-time house buyers should take caution when buying a house and taking loans to finance the purchase. Look out for my previous episode 1. Today's talk is already episode 6. Dr. Chang, the government on 31st of May 2021 announced the 40 billion ringgit Perkasa Plus Aid Package. And one of the measures was extended the residential homes stamp duty exemption scheme under the Home Ownership Campaign HOC for 6 months to December 31st, 2021. What's your opinion? This is my favorite question, and I shall offer my favorite answer. Now, although the objective of the extension is to reactivate the property industry and also to spur economic growth, the measures appear to be not well thought out again. I wonder whose ill-advised idea it was. It is still very difficult to understand why taxpayer money is being sacrificed to facilitate the niche market buyers and for the benefit of the housing developers, because this is exactly what's been done here. How else can you explain the fact that the government is waiving stamp duty for the transaction Less collection of such duties and revenues means government expenditure is being paid from other tax sources. Mind you, we are talking about developer stock, those completed and unsold properties. Why should the rest of the country subsidize these developers' marketing of their products? They made a bad decision. The rest of us have to subsidize the loss, is it? Why don't this developer just give a higher percentage of discount on these properties? It is elementary economics that when a product can't sell, you sell it cheaper in a soft market, especially so in these COVID-19 times. To the purchaser, there's no difference buying a property of 1 million ringgit with a stamp duty of 24,000 ringgit waived by the government and buying a property at 976,000 ringgit from the developer and paying 24,000 ringgit stamp duty to the government. The adage is privatizing profit and socializing losses is most apt to describe this situation. My second question, Dr. Chan, I'm sure the banks do adopt their in-house or private independent valuer to value and attach a price to a property when giving out loans, whether it's purchased from developer or in the secondary market. Would you like to comment on it? There must be transparency in price discovery. We reiterate the need to have all loans, whether from primary or secondary market, supported by an independent detailed valuation report as a check and balance mechanism. This will ensure that bankers lend on market value of the property and not on fictitious prices as unilaterally stated in the sale and purchase agreement. There's a need for proper market and feasibility study of new projects before they are even approved. The financial institution should obtain a full market feasibility study before they approve any project and its pricing. When valuations are made, false information should be weeded out so that it does not exacerbate price discovery, which lead to an ever-spiraling valuation. Now, Property Investors Club, who influence potential purchasers to buy certain project from which the former has been assured a substantial commission, ought to be investigated. In fact, shouldn't they be outlawed? There are already sufficient estate agents licensed and regulated by the government who can advise any potential buyer on the properties they are buying. All these estate agents are subjected to code of ethics and are answerable to the board of valuers, appraisal, estate agent, and property managers. The so-called investors club do not and cannot serve the interests of buyers, and there would be no legal recourse if buyers were cheated. For more details, checking on whether an estate agent is registered or not, please go into the Board of Valuers, Appraisal, Estate Agent, and Property Managers website at lppeh.gov.my. Thank you for the excellent questions. My next talk will be on lack and laxed in enforcement program weakens our house buyers' entitlement, especially on Section 18A, where developers supposed to be sent to jail for project abandonment and the nightmare being a victim of an abandoned housing project. Now, see you in the next episode. Cheers.